You open this door with the key of reason. Beyond it is another dimension. A dimension of truth. A dimension of freedom. A dimension of joy. You're moving into the land of both the ideal and the real, of the possible and the actual. You've just crossed over into the Capitalist Corner.
Where reason meets reality, welcome to the Capitalist Corner.
Welcome to the Capitalist Corner, everybody. I am your host, Michael Leibowitz. Please like, share, subscribe, do it all. It's a very big help. Also today, 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time, do not forget to check out Persephone and myself as we discuss everyday ethics. So I've decided that to bring some changes to the program here, rather than focusing on, rather than sort of diverting our attention across 8 or 9 articles a day, I'm going to cut it back and we're going to only do a couple. And today I decided to focus on something that's been interesting me of late, and that is the differences between Obama and Trump on immigration. Because I frequently hear, well, you know, Obama deported an awful lot of people, but Obama did not suffer the same fate as, Trump in terms of protest. I frequently see how many protests? 0 under Obama. And, no one complained about the, what's the word I'm looking for here? Due process, lack of due process under Obama. So I decided this morning to do a somewhat deep dive into this thing. Do your own research, obviously, but I think that I have looked into this enough that I can come to some general conclusions. We could have a good discussion about it. So the first thing I want to address is this idea that there were no protests under Obama. So I did a little bit of research this morning, and it turns out that, hold on. So from the 8114 American Immigration Council, there was an article titled, "Over 100 faith leaders arrested in protest against record deportations." This happened in front of the White House, and they actually said this: "We share the pain of mothers separated from their children and fathers who have risked their lives for love of their families. It has to end. We have to stop separating families and breaking the hearts of children torn from the arms of their parents." There was another article from ABC 24/7 Live that this was on 4/17/14. It was titled, "Protesters March Against Obama Deportation Policies. Chicago joined over 40 cities, and the enforcement priorities and policies which evolved over the years." Okay, that's not what I'm looking for, so let me remove that. But nonetheless, the point is that it's simply not true that there were no protests under Obama. Cronkite News, 12/13/15. "Protesters marched to demand an end to mass deportations. 18 more protests took place the same week." So there were indeed protests during the Obama administration over his deportation. So the idea that there wasn't is simply not true. Then the other thing we hear is nobody was complaining about the due process, lack thereof under Obama. Again, not true. The ACLU, May 1st, 2014, in an article entitled "Speed Over Fairness, Deportations Under the Obama Administration." And the ACLU says the Obama administration has prioritized speed over fairness in the removal system, sacrificing individualized due process in the pursuit of record removal numbers. From the AFL-CIO, this one on January 6, 2016. "Obama administration's crackdown on immigration ignores due process and creates communities filled with fear." So this claim, this idea that nobody cared about the deportations under Obama, or that nobody was complaining about lack of due process under Obama, that's just not true. We can say whatever we want today based on poor memory, but the historical record shows something different. Now, was it to the same extent as we're seeing now under Trump? Is it getting the same media coverage? I don't believe so. But there also might be some reasons why that's the case. Now, could it be said that the media bias plays a part? Sure, I have no problem with that. And there might be some other factors as well that lean in Trump's favor, but there's also some that go woefully against him. So let's just consider this. In the fiscal year 2016, 85% of all removals were recent border crossings, right? So there's a difference between removals from people who are just crossing the borders and what they call formal removals. These are people from the interior of the country where they actually go and seek people out to remove them. So in fiscal year 2016, 85% of all removals were border crossings, recent border crossings. Now, this wasn't always the case, as we'll see for Obama, but as of the fiscal year 2016, this was the case. Of the 90% that remained that were deported from the interior of the country, 90% were for serious crimes. This is from the Migration Policy Institute. And they also say that over the course of the Obama administration, there was a pronounced shift in focus to the removal of recent border crossers and criminals rather than ordinary status violators apprehended in the U.S. interior. So you can see that with Obama, the shift went from more general people that were just here illegally to more targeted, more specific. So in the entire, so you have to understand something now. For the entire Obama administration, 8 years, there were 5.3 million deportations. 3.1 million were formal removals, meaning that they had to actually seek them out, went and snatched them up. And 2.2 million were turnbacks at the border. Now, as of 2014 through 16, between 40 and 45% had criminal convictions, and less than 20% had violent or potentially violent convictions. But again, those numbers changed toward the end. That was between 2014 and 16, but the fiscal year 2016, we've already seen where the weight was. Now, Trump in 2025, 36% had prior criminal convictions, which is slightly less than what the Obama administration did for its 2 years. But less than 7% were for violent crimes. So less than 20 to less than 7. So far more were deported with far less were deported, with serious criminal convictions under Trump, percentage-wise. Now, importantly, as of November 30th, 73.6% of detainees had no criminal conviction. So now it's going up. As of January 7th, it's roughly the same. So whereas over the course of the Obama administration, we can see that the numbers actually went from a more generalized approach to more specific approach. Whereas Trump, it's getting more and more toward those that are, without criminal convictions, especially without violent convictions. I personally think that's important. Now, a lot of this has to do with the difference in approaches. So, like I said, I've been doing a deep dive in this. I read probably 2.5 hours on this stuff this morning from various articles, various AI sites. Now, the differences in approaches, this came from Claude. Obama emphasized selective enforcement and administrative relief. He prioritized deporting individuals with criminal records and recent border crossings. And he offered protections through DACA, deferred actions for childhood arrivals. Remember that? He actually made special exceptions for them. And he also tried for protections for parents of citizens, but the courts blocked it. So Obama moves toward the focus of getting rid of criminals in recent border crossings, also gives some leeway toward the children who arrived here and attempts to do so for their parents. Trump focuses on strict enforcement across the board. He views immigration through a security and sovereignty lens. He also, importantly, remember Trump implemented travel bans. So there were travel bans against Muslim countries. At first, it wanted to be Muslim countries, and then I think he switched it up. I don't remember exactly in what way. He also ended the DACA program, Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, ended it, and he reduced refugee admissions to historic lows. So there's definitely an acceleration, right, under the Trump administration. We can clearly see that. But then I want you to think about this. What about some of the things that Trump has said about immigrants, right? He says, why is it we only take people from shithole countries? We always take people from Somalia. Now, that's important that he mentions Somalia specifically because the Minnesota immigrant population is largely Somalian. He says, we take people from shithole countries. We always take people from Somalia, places that are a disaster, right? Filthy, dirty, disgusting, ridden with crime. He also makes this accusation, which is inaccurate, about immigrants. Most of them are on welfare, from failed nations or from prisons, mental institutions, gangs, or drug cartels. Now, you also can remember that he said that Mexican immigrants were bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists. Remember when he said that Haitian immigrants were, what were they? They were eating the pets, according to Trump. They're eating the cats and the dogs of the people that live there, which was a complete lie. So that's a lie. The rhetoric about who immigrants are is a lie. He's also claimed, of course, that other countries are emptying their prisons and mental institutions and they're coming here. That's a lie. But these are very derogatory statements about immigrants. And it's also raising the temperature. It's raising the temperature both among Trump supporters and Trump detractors. Trump supporters become more and more angry because they believe that we've got mental institutions and jails emptying their prison populations and their hospitals to come over here and live off welfare, rape the women, and commit crimes, murders, and sell drugs. That's the picture that's painted. Meanwhile, the immigrants who are being painted this way are understandably upset about it, and the people who support them are going to get upset about this. These are escalations. That is only my point. And of course, we also have, don't forget, the Trump administration has reclassified cartels as terrorist organizations. He's deployed the National Guard. He's sought to he's talking about implementing the Insurrection Act. I believe he implemented or tried to implement or used it as a defense, the Alien and Sedition Act. So he's talked about putting the military on American streets. And then there's this. Who can forget about sending people to this El Salvadorian prison? Some of them were mistakenly sent there, but many of them weren't criminals at all. He's just sending them being deported to this place without due process. And people are complaining about that, as people complained under Obama. So you're taking people and sending them to a prison. So let's not forget that this is all part of the context. What I want to understand is why Minnesota? What is happening in Minnesota and why? Well, I'll get to that in a second. So in addition to that, Trump also has, according to Claude and everything we've seen on the news, but you don't want to just trust the news, more prominent ICE presence. Under Trump, Operation Metro Surge deployed 2,000 agents to Minneapolis, St. Paul. According to the DHS, this is the largest immigration operation ever carried out. So when you deploy this amount of agents to cities, they're wearing masks, don't forget, many times in unarmed vehicles, it's more than ever. And you do that within the context of bad-mouthing Somalians in particular who are in Minnesota, right? And you've talked about Haitians eating cats and dogs. You've talked about shithole countries. You've talked about how they're mostly criminals. They're mostly on welfare. You've been engaging in this, Trump, for 10 years where he's been doing this, talking about immigrants in this way. He wanted to build a wall to keep them out, banning other countries from sending their people here. And now you have this. So that is the broader context. And we can't forget that we didn't have that with Obama. Obama did not talk this way. He also did not go as far as what Trump is doing. But yes, people still complained. So we have to keep all that in mind. It's very, very important, right? So now there's the claim that's been out there that the local law enforcement in Minnesota is just not cooperating with the Trump administration, and that is what's leading to all the problems. Well, first of all, not until I want to say 2002, there was this new law passed that even allowed the local governments to assist federal law enforcement. So for most of the country's history, local law enforcement could not assist federal agents. I shouldn't say most of the country's history because we didn't even have federal immigration until the 1870s or so. But from that time, the local law enforcement wasn't involved at all. They just recently passed this. So it's not like it's always been the case that they're doing so. Importantly, the law doesn't say that they have to. Right? It does not say that they have to help. Now, importantly, specifically in Minnesota, by law, look this up, everybody, please. The law limits the ability of local law enforcement to cooperate with ICE when it comes to ICE holdings of people in jail. So there's actually laws in Minnesota that prohibit them from helping out in the way that the Trump administration wants them to. So now, again, remember this. Yes, there were protests under Obama. Anyone who says they're not, it just doesn't match the historical record, I'm sorry, you're wrong. Yes, people complained about lack of due process under Obama. Anybody who says otherwise, sorry, you're just wrong. I've got the receipts. I can't, I don't know what else to tell you. You're just wrong. And then you also have the fact that as Obama's term proceeded, less focus on all immigrants, more focus on recent arrivals and serious criminals. In Trump, we have less focus on recent arrivals and criminals and more toward general. And Trump has also made statements, by the way, that everybody has to be deported. We want mass deportations. When you combine all that with the anti-immigrant rhetoric coming out of the Trump administration, I think it's okay to, not okay, but I think it begins to become clear why there would be a difference, especially when you're targeting Somalis. Given what he said about Somalis, given what he said about other, let's just put it out there, dark-skinned people. Whether it be Haitians, Mexicans, Venezuelans, they're gang members, they're rapists, they come from filthy countries, they're all on welfare, they're coming from jails. When you take all that and you're bombing drug boats, don't forget that. You're also sending these people to prisons. In El Salvador, they sent it to a prison, and not a very nice one, by the way. So when you're talking about all that, now you're deploying according to the DHS, the largest immigration operation ever, to a state that by law doesn't cooperate on all levels with federal law enforcement. You can see why this thing escalates. Then just consider some of the rhetoric that has come out of the administration post, let me find it here, after the shootings. Remember now, there was a woman shot named Renee Good, and there was a guy shot, I think his name was Alex Preddy. Yes, Alex Preddy. right away now, these are some of the comments coming out. Right away after the Good shooting, Kristi Noem comes out and says the ICE agent fired defensive shots after Good attempted to run him over. No investigation, nothing. That's what she says. Regarding Preddy, Noem said he approached U.S. Border Patrol officers with a 9mm semi-automatic handgun. No, he had a holstered 9mm handgun. He didn't approach them with it. And he violently resisted efforts to disarm him. He was shot after he was disarmed because she said this led an agent to fire defensive shots. But even if what she's saying is true about the gun, there was no investigation. This is what she came out and said right off the bat. White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller called Preddy an assassin on social media, a claim J.D. Vance amplified by reposting it. During a White House press conference, Vice President Vance said, "I don't care what Tim Walz says," and says the ICE agent's life was in danger during the incident. Caroline Levitt said, without any evidence, the deadly incident that took place in Minnesota occurred as a result of a larger, sinister left-wing movement that has spread across the country. On Truth Social, President Trump said of Renee Good, the woman shot and killed, that she violently, willfully, and viciously ran over the ICE officer. We all know that's not true. Even if you say the shooting was justified, it's simply not true that she ran him over. It's not true. He then says, I'm not happy with the two incidents. But he says of the two people, of course, he was not an angel and she was not an angel. Look at some tapes, he says. So my point is that when you have an administration that engages in this type of rhetoric, both after those two shootings and before, right, can you understand that it's more than just he's not getting cooperation from local officials that leads to this stuff? I'm not even going to say that there isn't a bias in the media against Trump. I believe there is. Do I think in Minnesota they are less likely to cooperate with Trump? Yes, I do. Do I think that more people turn out because of Trump? Yes. Do I think ICE is facing more pushback right now than they did under Obama? Yes, I do. But why? Why is the question? Because we have a president who for 10 years has systematically, if he does anything systematically, maybe I should say repeatedly, him, his administration, and their influencer lackeys have demonized immigrants, lied about immigrants, used inflammatory rhetoric, violated due process, sent people to prisons in other countries, right? Can you understand why this is what ends up happening? It's not simply that they don't like Trump. I'm sorry. It's just not. So with that, I hope I'm going to go back now. I'm hoping we have some questions or comments from the audience that we can use. I didn't want to break my flow of the discussion in order to go through them. Remember, too, folks, we allow super stickers, super chats. They are greatly, greatly appreciated, by the way. Let me just scroll down here a little bit. It's a lot of hellos. Hi, Scott and Matt. Jenna Kleem says, where does that come from that there were no protests or complaints? Well, it's all over social media. I mean, I don't know who you follow, so it kind of depends on who's in your sort of feed. But in my feed, there's often this meme that goes out, for one, that says all the 5 million deportations under Obama, 0 protests. Nobody ever complained about due process under Obama. That's the type of thing that's said all over there. Kira Felix says Trump is doing much worse. Robert Naser says, quote, you didn't complain then. They did what we're doing. Actually, I probably did. And as an active participant in many Tea Party rallies and events, I have the photos and stories to prove it. Awesome, Robert. Another thing is that this can easily be switched around on these people, because I don't remember an abundance of right-wingers out there praising Obama for all his deportations. right? Where were they defending him and singing his praises and, shaking their fists of how wonderful he was? They, of course, weren't. I'll admit at that time, my focus was not on immigration. I didn't understand the issue. I hadn't studied it. I was busy criticizing Obama's socialism far more than I was concerned about his immigration policies. Plus, I thought that the DACA executive order was unconstitutional. I thought that what he was doing with executive orders was unconstitutional, attacking countries, giving out phony red lines, that sort of thing. And then Robert says an important point. Even if I missed some of the previous administration's vices, that doesn't change those same vices into virtues under the present administration. That is also very true. The hypocrisy, if it is there on the part of the people criticizing Trump, does not render those critiques inaccurate. Rahazam says, under ICE, his administration is running around like masked vigilantes with badges. Worse by a wide margin, I think. Doesn't mean Obama was good, just not as bad. I agree. And like I said, we have the evidence. Okay, so Akira Felix says, Michael Trump, I agree Michael Trump is much worse, but the precedent was set by Obama and people want to ignore that. Okay, I don't ignore that. Right? And I would say the precedent wasn't set by Obama because Obama inherited a rather robust immigration system when it comes to deportations, in large part stemming from the war on terror, from changes that took place then. So Obama inherited that. So we can't just put it all on him. I can't stand Obama. I can't stand any of them. I don't understand where this comes from. And it's not you, Akira, but this idea that when a president is off, we're not supposed to criticize him, that I'm supposed to go back and keep criticizing past presidents. Trump is the person in office. He's the person that is repeatedly lying. He's the one that has established a virtual cult around him of people who believe and spread his lies. That is my concern right now. My concern right now are the violations of rights being committed by the Trump administration. If Kamala Harris was in office, I'd be up here talking about her and what she was doing. Can you imagine the idiocy if I was right now criticizing Kamala Harris of Democrats saying to me, why aren't you criticizing Trump? Everybody would recognize how stupid that is immediately. It's only in this MAGA wasteland that we end up with this problem. Or it's not even a problem, this stupid thing about why aren't you criticizing this one? Every time it seems that I'll criticize them, somebody will tell me, oh yeah, well, what about Biden? Biden's a fool. I don't like Biden. I never liked him. I didn't like him when he was first running for vice president. I hated him when I saw what he did to Paul Ryan in that debate. Rahazam says Obama was more of a continuation of Clinton-Bush immigration policies. How far back do we want to go? To the World War II era? Yeah, I don't know how far back we have to go. Kira Felix says Trump has talked junk about Haitians, Mexicans, Venezuelans, Somalans. Yes. All right. Jeanette points out Minnesota's a blue state. Bonnie Bertrand says Trump has classic anti-conceptual primitive force as the bottom line mentality. He does. He is, it's such an anti-intellectual movement that is just lie after lie after lie. A guy told me this morning that, let me find it so that I can share it accurately. Trump had to win and has to perform to save us from dictatorship. Trump, who praises dictators, says he wishes that his people would stand up and rise the way they do for Kim Jong-un, who said he wanted to be a dictator for one day, who is on an executive order rampage, who has called for taking guns without due process, threatened the media. He's going to save us from dictatorship. The inversion is unreal. Unreal. Let's see here. Bonnie Bertrand says, good work, Michael. Thank you very, very much. I'm going to bring Persephone up here. Persephone, can you come up? Because I want to ask you some questions. Persephone, you and by the way, we will still be answering questions from the audience. Oh my goodness, that's so loud.
So my hair's
No, I've muted you. That was insane. I cannot voice that upon the audience. Just give me the thumbs up when you're decent and ready to roll, ready to rock and roll. Persephone did say in the comments over here, he's going to save you from another person being a dictator. He'll be the dictator. He is a dictatorship. Jenna Kleem has provided us with $2. She says, yes, thank you so much, Jenna. All right, let's unmute Persephone. So Persephone, I presume, do you have news? I mean, I know you do. Do you watch the news in South Africa, the South African news stations, or do you watch just American news or world news?
world news. The only time I pay attention to South African news is if something like really massive happens, or if Uncle Squirrel has a family meeting. So that's our president. If he has like an address, I'll watch that. But otherwise, I sort of just get news from. I don't ever watch South African news because it's crap.
Okay. Have you followed the Trump MAGA dynamic in any detail, and for how long?
For quite a while, like since the first time he was like running for office.
Okay, perfect. I'm interested as your perspective as an intelligent person, but from another country. What is your perspective on some of the things that you hear us talking about Trump on this program?
He's a clown. He's a narcissist. He's a bad businessman. He's a bad person. He's a moron. People think that he's playing 4D chess when he's just like a pigeon shitting on a chessboard. Someone said to me the other day, Trump is being so clever by not going to war because he knows that in wartime Americans can't vote, so he'll stay president. And I was like, explain to me how any of that is factually accurate. Like, number one, Americans have voted in wartime. There's never been, as far as I know, a case of Americans not voting because there was a war. Even if that was true, there's term limits. He can't remain president. So, like, what part of what you said is factually accurate? Which part? And then they just got duck back with me. So I was like, cool. So he is, he's a narcissist and a moron and a bad businessman. Every move he makes is stupid. He sometimes stumbles into things that are like could seem clever to a person who doesn't pay much attention, but it's all accidental. I think anything that he does that has good effects is completely accidental on his part. He operates completely by whim and by what makes him feel good.
By
By
what?
whim.
Whim?
Whim.
Whim? It's whim, a whim, whim.
A whim away, a whim away.
Look,
Yeah.
Man Sharma says, hey, Michael, Man here. Been busy with college, but I watched the recordings. It's my birthday today. Wish me. Well, happy birthday, sir. These are 100, I think, rupees that he's given us. You don't know either?
I have no idea.
All right,
100 currencies.
Man, what is that and what the hell does it mean? Because we don't know over here. Yeah, that's I think more than anything what has struck me about their rupees. How many are 100 rupees in American dollars, man? I'm curious. So it's the blatant anti-intellectualism of Trump that gets my attention. There's no conceptualization. There's no attempt at rational thought. There's no attempt at gaining evidence. Harry Frankfurter wrote a great essay on bullshit years ago. And I just read a whole book on the science of detecting bullshit recently. I read it. And the idea is that a bullshitter isn't necessarily a liar. And what it was is a liar knows the truth and intentionally tries to deceive you. A bullshitter just says anything and doesn't care whether it's true or not. And that's the impression I get from Trump. Trump will just say anything if he thinks it's going to benefit him.
Yeah, I think that he is both. He is both a liar
Oh,
and
yeah.
a
Oh, no.
yeah.
I'm not. Yeah. No. Yeah. You're absolutely correct. He's a liar. I'm not. I'm
There's
just saying that
definitely
he just will say anything. That's, I guess, what I mean is it doesn't make any difference to him. The truth or falsity doesn't matter. He just throws it out there.
If I was on a game show and I had to say one nice thing or like one positive thing about Trump, it would be that he's weirdly good at creating like rabid fandom in people. Like people, I remember a little while ago, and this might have been quite a while ago, when people were like making these memes of like Trump and Jesus together, and they were sort of like hailing him as the second coming. And I was just looking at that and thinking, how divorced from reality do you have to be? Because number one, he's just a dude. He was never a good businessman. Like most of it, not even going to go into that. He was never a good businessman. Now that he's president, like he's done nothing good, and you're hailing him as like this messiah-like figure. If you're not religious, that's fucking weird. If you are religious, I feel like not
It's
that I want
even
to defend.
weirder.
Yeah, I don't want to like. I'm not defending religious people, but even if you are religious, you're shitting on your own religion in favor of some
Uber douche.
absolute, like, insane clown man.
Can you call him an Uber douche?
He is an uber douche.
He's an Uber douche. Race makes a very good point. He says showmanship, because I do think that Trump is a good marketer. He's good at that. He's good at getting himself out of there. He sucks up all the oxygen and draws all the attention to him. I think that, the attempts he's made at deregulation are good. I think the tax cuts are good. The capital gains taxes are good. The loosening up regulations on energy are good. But like you, I think it's accidental. It's not a result of an approach that says, okay, this is the rational course of action, and we're going to put it all together, and we're going to put it out there. It's all just stream of consciousness, whatever comes to him, and that's what he does. Ian Gilmore says he's a good carnival barker. He's good at kayfabe in wrestling terms. Ian, you are catering to my pref when you say kayfabe, because I'm a big wrestling fan. Well, I used to be anyways.
So in epic rap battles of history, which I know this is like the fifth time that I've brought it up, there is an epic rap battle between Biden and Trump. And one of the things that Biden says to him is, "You're a wrestling heel. Nothing about you is real. Bitch, you didn't even really write the art of the deal." And like that just sums up Trump for me. Like that's what he is. Everything about him is fake. Like he's so good at making people believe that he's this ingenious businessman because he like lucked out, basically.
Now, the main thing that I wanted to get across today was the idea that it's all smoke and mirrors, or it's all bias that criticizes Trump for his immigration policies. And they compare him to Obama. I just really wanted to put forward the differences. Now, you were somebody that was listening to the exposition. Was there anything that you think I should have added or shouldn't have said, or anything of that nature? I'm going to post, by the way, right now while Persephone talks, the all the articles that I read today. I'm going to post them.
Um, do I
Not,
think that there's anything that you said that you shouldn't have said? No, I think it was all pretty accurate. Did I think you left anything out? Also, no, not really. Um, I want to comment on something that Akira said. The only thing I liked about him was how he triggered the left when he won both times. I don't think personally that that's a good reaction. I don't think that you should like someone because he pissed off your enemies.
I don't either, but tell me why. What's your gripe?
Because it's still tribalism. It's still
Ah,
it's still tribalism. Like you're saying I like something about him because he pissed off people that I don't like. That's tribalism, like at its core. It might you might like paint it as something else, but that's what it is.
I
I enjoy
think
this because it fucked off someone I don't like.
it's kind of second-handed, right? It reminds me kind
It's
of
what
of Gail Winand. Remember Gail Winand from the Fountainhead? He wanted to have power over other people.
Oh yeah?
And that's what it kind of reminds me of. It's like, yes, you're fucking with their heads. They're getting angry. They're upset. But and look, I've done it myself. I certainly have enjoyed seeing people I don't like getting pissed off. So I'm not trying to pick on Akira, but I think your point is nonetheless very, very valid.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand the feeling because it's not like I've never had it. Um, but I also think that it's one of those things that as people we should work on.
Oh, sure.
None of us are perfect, and we're always going to have like in the question yesterday that I asked, which was, have you ever like hopped on this cancel culture trend? Almost everybody said yes, even though they know now, they know better. And that's the thing. As long as you're as long as you know that that's not a good way to think, um, I think it's fine that you did feel that way. But
Elaborate. What do you mean, fine, that you felt that way?
um, if you felt that way and you recognize now that it is the wrong way to feel and you recognize that it's tribalism, I don't think that you should beat yourself up about the fact that you felt that way. If you still feel that way, then you should beat yourself up. Sorry, Akira. Um, but if you acknowledge that it's not the right way to think, then I don't think that you should feel guilty that you did think that way, is what I mean.
Can you read Akira's comment for the group while I continue posting?
I agree. That's kind of how I see the protesters. I like that they're going after ICE, but then they stay in power too. You see, slippery slope, my son. Like as soon as you start going, well, it's fine if they're going after the people I don't like. What happens when that turns around? Because it will. You can't approve of a behavior just because it's against the people that you don't like, even if part of you thinks, oh, I like this, because I do understand. I think like ICE walking around in like ma- in masks and shooting people, I think that's fucked up. And part of me wants to agree with the protesters and go, yes, this is great. But also, like, I acknowledge that I can't approve what ICE is doing, and I can't approve of the protesters getting up in ICE's face either, because both of them are fucked up in different ways.
So I've posted just now an abundance of articles. I did not post the AI stuff because they often give me a hard time when I'm trying to post it about line breaks and this and that. But I've posted an abundance of articles now that went into this about Obama and deportation and due process.
Um, and when I post the show notes tonight or today on the Capitalist Corner website, available at www.thecapitalistcorner.org, I will include that list of articles.
How are you? Why I got to send them to you now too,
I mean, where did you post them to? Did you post them to Twitter?
and Facebook.
Believe it or not, I follow you on Twitter, so I can just get them off there.
Lucky you.
I know. I hate ICE, but I don't like what I saw yesterday with the poster saying, "Oh yes, dead ICE agents don't kill people." I saw that on. I saw you posted that race. I think that's fucked up.
Well, it is. Part of the Trump is the leader of the country. And part of what I'm trying to get across is that we can't just ignore the rhetoric that he, his administration, the influencers that follow him engage in. You can't just act like this situation just arose where ICE agents went into Minnesota to gather up illegals, because that's just not how it has gone down. It's all against the backdrop of a guy who's been demonizing these people, who's been inflaming passions, who's been escalating the situation rather than de-escalating it. This is what continues to happen, right? And whether I like it or not, because I'd prefer if people didn't simply respond to what people in power have to say, that nonetheless is what occurs. So when you have Trump doing that, it leads to all sides escalating. Now you have this idiot that Reese is talking about. That escalates. There's no de-escalation. None, right? But in the end, it goes back to a president with bad policies, bad rhetoric, who won't stop lying. And that, to me, is something that's just inescapable when we talk about this situation. He lies. Look, other countries are not emptying their prisons and their mental institutions. Immigrants are not more likely to commit crimes than Americans. They're not more likely to be on welfare. It's all BS that he puts out there to inflame people's passions. Kira Felix says, I think the worst of Trump's immigration policy is he's sending them to a foreign prison. That part is unprecedented. Yes, that's absolutely terrible. Hello, Nicole Hingle.
Hi, Nicole.
Says hello.
I don't even think that there is a worst part, because I think that all of it is really bad. A lot of what he's been doing is just all sort of bottom of the barrel fucked up. But what was I going to say?
I have no idea. If I knew, you wouldn't have to say it.
Yeah, I know. So the protests didn't spring up out of nowhere, It's all just a vicious cycle where, like, Trump does something fucked up, they protest, it gets worse, they protest more, now there's more violence, now they're going to be masked, now there's more protests, and it's just like we keep going around in this circle of fucked up. And we were talking about it the other day, and I don't know what the solution to this would be. The person that I was talking to had in their mind, they were like, I have the solution. And I was like, but you don't, because there is no clean, neat, black and white solution to this, because you can't just let ICE do whatever they want, but you also can't just say, well, the protesters all need to be arrested, or the protesters should be able to just get up in ICE's face and do whatever. There is no neat solution.
Gary Menard says escalation of violence and opposition works in the authoritarians' favor, and Trump inner circle knows it. This here is part of the solution. Our founding principles, the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. But broader than that is just you just can't make people think. Right, Persephone, you just did something that I thought was absolutely amazing. You took a very conceptual approach. So when Akira Felix picked out one thing and said, this is the worst part, you correctly, in my view, said it's all part of a broader problem. So you can't sort of just pick it out. And that is kind of my whole point in this episode, is that you can't just say, well, Obama got more help from the locals. whereas Trump is not getting help from the locals. Or, ICE wasn't being attacked the way they were under Obama like they are under Trump. Those statements are true, but they're ripped
Devoid of
out of a context.
Yeah.
They're ripped from a context that explains so much more. Gary Menard, super sticker, $1.99. Thank you very, very much, Gary. That is greatly appreciated.
I think one of the reasons that people want a clean solution, right? They want a simple answer because that is what makes them feel comfortable. They want to say, well, if we just did this, then all of our problems would be solved. And it's uncomfortable to sit with the idea that in a situation like America is in right now, there is no simple solution. There is no, if we just did this, because.
So Nicole Hingle asks, do either of you think we should grant citizenship to those that are here and have been here for a certain number of years, not on welfare, no criminal history? Citizenship to me is maybe even above my pay grade, Nicole, because the right over naturalization is actually granted to the federal government in Article 1, Section 8. I am far more in favor of legalization, legalized status where they're allowed to stay. At that point, whether they're citizens or not I don't know. I haven't thought enough about it, to be honest, but I am all for granting legal status. All for it.
I think you and Mark should have a debate about this because I know Mark has some very interesting thoughts about citizenship.
Please, okay, maybe we will. Maybe we can. Thank you for the great question, Nicole. Akira Felix says, my point is that unprecedented is making it worse. If he was just doing what Obama was doing, it would still be terrible, but not as bad. Oh, sure. I agree with that. Gary Menard says citizenship should be hard work. Stay permits should be like water. I guess that means readily abundant. Readily available, I think, is what Gary means.
Yeah, look, I mean, I understand as long as the person is coming in and sort of maybe not assimilating into the culture entirely, but if someone comes into the country and is willing to work and is willing to, as far as possible, assimilate into the culture, I think that they should be allowed to stay. If someone comes into the country and they just want to cause crap and they want to be on welfare.
Well, we should get rid of welfare. I think that Persephone should be granted citizenship. Let's bring Persephone to the States and grant her citizenship. We have a $3 super sticker from Nicole Hingle. Nicole, thank you. Thank you so much. By the way, everybody, Jim Valiant should be joining us tomorrow, so that'll be great for audience questions. Jim Valiant, he's awesome. I just have a question for the audience. Do you like the approach that I've decided upon here of only covering a couple of stories and covering them in depth rather than going through, the normal 8 or so stories? What do you think about that, audience? Please let me know. Please do so now if you can. If you can't, I understand. You can let me know at another time. But I'm really interested because I think that will provide much better conversation for the show. We'll be able to get far more in depth and have a far better understanding than we get from going through, all these articles. Jeanette says yes. Jenna Kleem says, Nicole Hingle says yes, I like it better this way. Looks like we're on to something here, Persephone. Jenna Kleem says maybe Persephone doesn't want citizenship. Of course she wants citizenship, Jenna. Come on. Look at that smile on her. Look at that beautiful smile. Of course she does. And for her husband as well. We're not just going to leave him in South Africa. He can come too. Jenna likes this as well. Persephone, are you going to give the capitalist thought of the day today, or am I?
No, you're going to give the capitalist thought of the day. I did it yesterday, remember?
No, you did not.
Yes,
That's a lie.
did.
You and Mark, I swear to God, you're lying. You asked the question yesterday. Okay. The capitalist thought of the day today has to do with individual rights. Agreed. 2 or 3 topics ideal, or one very heated hour-long Mike Markle debate. Ian Gilmore says, LOL, such liars. Oh, you two. Yeah. No, you're right, Ian. They are. But either way, the concept of individual rights is something that arises because of human nature, because of who we are as conceptual moral beings who have requirements if we are to act in ways that are going to further our own lives. This concept of individual rights applies to everybody, with an intact brain that has reached the age of maturity. It doesn't stop at some border that's been drawn on a map. It doesn't end because of somebody's ethnicity, religion, or race. It applies to each of us. And if we are going to be consistent advocates of capitalism, we have to be consistent advocates of individual rights. And if we are going to be consistent advocates of individual rights, we have to acknowledge that the people that are coming to this country have them too, and we have no right to initiate force against them. So let us embrace the principles upon which this country was founded as they've been expanded upon and improved by Ayn Rand. Let's do so loudly, let's do so proudly, and let's do so consistently. And with that, Persephone, you ask a question.
So I'm going to hijack Nicole Hingle's question about whether...
I thought you were going to ask them how handsome I am, but okay.
Okay, it's double question. How handsome is Michael on a scale of 10 to 10? And then also, I'm going to hijack Nicole Hingle's question. Do you think that the United States should grant citizenship to those that have been there for a number of years, not on welfare, no criminal history? That's the question.
All right, that's an awesome question. Thank you, Persephone. That capitalist thought needs to be a short on Facebook for share. Persephone is on it. Thank you, Gary. Everybody, thank you so much for your feedback. Thank you for engaging in the discussion. Thank you for the super chats and super stickers. We will be back here in 23 hours time. Until then, please remember to always check your premises. Peace.